Welcome back to our series on the 4 critical challenges facing local chambers of commerce today. Critical challenge number 2 is the lack of standard industry metrics. Our industry lacks standard metrics so that chambers can know how well they are performing in relation to their peers and in relation to the median industry averages. As an industry, I believe this is our biggest challenge. Failure to meet these challenges over the next 10 or 20 years could do serious, lasting damage to our credibility in our industry. It's that serious. Let me provide some context as to why I would say that. Since the first Chamber of Commerce in this country predates the Revolutionary War, we can say that we work in one of the most durable, time-honored industries this country has ever known. Secondly, according to our colleagues at the Ohio Chamber of Commerce, Ohio has more chambers of commerce than any other state. Despite chamber prevalence and our exceedingly long history, no one seems to know what standard performance looks like. For example, how many of you can reliably tell me what your market penetration rate is within the primary zip codes of your service area? How many of you can reliably tell me your current percentages of non-dues revenue versus dues revenue? Now, I don't raise those questions to embarrass anyone. I'm raising them because these are basic organizational metrics that every Chamber of Commerce can measure and compare themselves against the median average. Someone should be collecting this basic organizational data on chambers so that we can establish industry standard metrics and then use those metrics to help chambers plan better, make better decisions, and measure how well or how poorly they are performing in key areas of their operation. But as things stand right now, most chambers don't have a clue how they are performing relative to their peers. And let me give you an example of what I mean. Let's assume we have 2 chambers of commerce that we will call Chamber A and Chamber B. Both chambers want to increase revenue by 10%. So they start looking at various revenue generating aspects of their model. We'll also assume that the standard industry metric for market penetration rate is 29%. So Chamber A discovers that their market penetration rate within their primary service area is 21%, or 8 points lower than the industry standard. So they make a straightforward business decision to spend more time and resources toward a sales prospecting effort to increase membership levels. Now, on the other hand, Chamber B discovers that their market penetration rate is 37%. In other words, they outperform the industry average for market penetration by 8 points. Now, let me ask you, should Chamber B make the same decision as Chamber A? Well, of course not. If the problem they're trying to solve is revenue growth of 10%, then increasing market penetration seems more time-consuming and a lot less practical than other solutions that they may have available to them. Now, in our example, Chambers A and B made those decisions with higher levels of confidence because, number one, they knew the industry standard metric for market penetration, and number two, they knew how they were performing in relation to that standard. But since no standard industry metrics exist, many of our chambers lack the data to make confident decisions about their future. Many chambers, and we see this every day when we are out there in the field, are simply unsure of what to do next because there are so few data points guiding them. I believe this harms our profession, and I believe it could seriously wound our profession until we address it. The generations coming behind us are growing up in an ocean of data. The business environment they are being introduced to is entirely data-driven. It's magical thinking that the Chamber of Commerce industry can somehow believe we are exempt from their norms and expectations. And as an industry, we may have gotten away with magical thinking for quite a while, but I believe that time is coming to an end. We will either develop standard industry metrics or we will remain an industry that struggles to make confident decisions and in many communities struggles to be relevant. Several factors affect the lack of industry standard metrics, and I call these factors real and other factors imagined. Now, starting with the real factors, as we've already noted, there is very little data and published literature within the industry. This seems very odd for an industry that's been around for 255 years as a part of so many communities nationwide. Second, the data that exists may be biased. Every few years, our friends at the Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives, also known as ACCE, they publish a data set. And the ACCE data is useful, and I applaud their efforts to compile and publish it, but I have concerns about the barriers to entry and maybe some bias, and here's why. To participate in the ACCE survey, a chamber exec must first become a member of ACCE, then the chamber exec must certify that the chamber has completed a financial audit, then the chamber exec must take the time and effort to collect and input all the data points they ask for, and while I understand that ACCE is attempting to establish controls for accuracy, the likelihood that many of our SACA chambers of commerce would successfully negotiate these barriers is low. My sense is that the barriers result in the best performing chambers of commerce completing the survey. So rather than establishing industry averages, the data may actually be an average of the best performing chambers. Nevertheless, the ACCE data is a good resource and I recommend it, and it's an important step for our industry toward embracing data in our decision making. So those are the real factors. But our industry also has an imagined factor that prevents us from moving the industry forward with data. And here's that imagined factor. It's the idea that my chamber is different. This is so prevalent within our industry that we often poke fun at ourselves by saying, when you've seen one chamber, you've seen one. Look, while I understand that each community is unique and some of that uniqueness is embedded within the operation of the local chamber, the truth is this. Every chamber can be measured on member retention rate, market penetration rate, member recruitment per year, dues versus non-dues percentage of revenue, cost per member, and months of cash. These are basic metrics that can help you determine how well or how poorly your chamber is operating compared to the industry and to your peers. Before we move on to the localized challenges, I want to make sure you fully understand how important standard metrics could be for our industry. First, let's acknowledge that although chambers of commerce compete against each other for members, they're not in the widget industry. If they were in the widget industry in our capitalist society, a few highly skilled and well-funded widget companies would have eventually outcompeted all of the smaller widget companies over the past 255 years. And these highly skilled, well-funded widget companies would consolidate their market power and dominate the industry in the same way that an Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and Meta dominate their industries. But that's not the way our industry works. Chambers of commerce are typically tied to a geographic area, so it's not like Beaver Creek is going to dominate Westchester. While there's never going to be territorial consolidation and domination, each of these communities likely has an economic development organization that competes directly against neighboring communities for new business. And trust me when I say this, that economic development team in your community is looking for any competitive edge that it can possibly get. Consequently, if your Chamber of Commerce can demonstrate through an independent body that you are ranked in the top 10% in the state of Ohio or in your demographic, then your economic development team will use that data point to attract new business into your area. So if you think that industry standard metrics aren't important, think again. The chambers who engage with us on this may well be out-competing your community for new business, and you wouldn't even know it because you didn't engage. I hope you found this video helpful. As always, we welcome your feedback, and in the next video, we'll look at localized challenges facing chambers. In the meantime, chamber on.